How do we get the gospel out to the countryside? Many rural areas are poorly served by Bible believing churches, but church plants in rural areas have a number of challenges. There can be small finances, leaders can struggle to get support from nearby churches and more experienced pastors. Congregations may take a while longer to get up to a number where they're self sustaining in terms of finances. And so, one of the things we do with the Rural Project as a charity is support rural residents. And these are potential pastors and planters into rural communities. We give financial support and coaching to help them have the best chance of successful planting or revitalizing in the future. So Matt, who we're talking to today, is our first rural resident, our only rural resident at the moment, but with faith, I say the first. Um, and he hopes, God willing, to engage in church planting or revitalising in Northumbria. And he works alongside Rob, who's pastor at Wooler Evangelical Church. We have spoken to Rob before, but feel free to go and watch the video if you want to find a bit more about Rob's role at Wooler. We're going to be talking particularly today about the rural residency, and I hope this will serve you in a number of ways. First, if you're a church or a potential leader who might be thinking about doing rural residency, we hope this will give you an idea of what that involves, why it's hopefully a good idea. Secondly, a number of churches and individuals financially support Matt, and we hope that this will update you on where your money's going and hopefully give you ideas of what to pray for. Perhaps you're not in the meeting, but you're watching at a later date. And finally, we hope that the conversation might give inspiration for churches and individuals taking the plunge into church planting or revitalizing. It's hard to get books and guidance that is relevant to perhaps more rural settings. So even if you'd never in a million years team up with us to do rural church planting, we hope that seeing Matt and Rob's journey over the years might give one example of how this could work and give you a bit of inspiration for your setting as well. So, welcome, Rob and Matt. Sat there together, like I don't know whether it's the two old men from the Muppets or whatever in Wooler Evangelical Church. We're going to start with Matt. Matt, what led you to pursue a rural residency and specifically towards looking at planting or revitalising in Northumbria?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, that's. I feel like it could be quite a long answer, but I'm going to try and keep it short. Where does this come from? So I previously, before coming up to Wooler, I was at a church in Gateshead. It was an urban, larger church, so very different context from here. And then the church before that was a church plant in North Durham. So I had a bit of experience with the plant. I was there for that one from the start. Got to experience the sort of the church plant there. But I think from early days of being in ministry, I always had a heart for the Northeast, a heart for seeing churches planted up here, and just seeing the big need that has been. And then in terms of coming to Northumberland, my wife Rosie, she sort of spent her teenage years growing up here. Her family all live in Alnwick, and it was coming to a small rural church that had a Friday evening youth group where she heard the gospel for the first time and came to Christ. And it was through another church where she was baptized later on in this area. And we've together seen the fruit of rural churches in this area, but there are so few, and many of them have already closed down, and such a big need up here. And having come to visit family regularly together, we've seen the need more and more. We've seen, as we've traveled up, more and more houses being built all over the place, but the churches are just so few and far between. And so that's kind of where the heart for it came from. But then it added to that, we linked back up with Rob. So Rob and I were in Durham at university together at the same church, training together. So we knew each other for quite a while. And at one point, I just went, "Oh, Rob's in Wooler. Let's go and have lunch." And so we went and had lunch. He tagged us along to their first ever holiday club, so we ended up coming to help with that. That was a couple of years ago now. And from there, I went, yeah, rural ministries where I want to go into. And then I came to the first Rural Project conference, heard about this thing called a residency. And I went to Rob Scotland. I went, yeah, I'd love to be involved in this. At the same time, I think you went to Rob Scotland and went, we'd love to have one, completely independent of each other. And then sort of the the dots joined up, didn't they? And yeah, that's how we ended up here in Muller, sort of like linked together and just see what the Lord's going to do up here.
Mm. And so, for both of you, how have you experienced the support of the residency so far? I know a lot of it is in-house church stuff, and yeah, but what's it looked like if somebody was considering it? How's that support looked so far?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I think for me, especially from the start, fundraising was a big thing, a big worry for me, and the Royal Project have really helped with that. So taking on half the burden to try and get that support was a huge weight off my shoulders, and then supporting how to go about that as well, especially from Rob Scotland, who's had experience himself in fundraising, just getting that wisdom from him and the contacts he had and others have got as well, and just spreading the word around what was going to happen and getting support to allow it to happen was a big thing. Um, and from the Royal Project as well, I've got a mentor who I speak to every 6 weeks. You've already mentioned him once this morning, Tim. It's John Hindley, who I get to speak to. It's a great opportunity to have his wisdom every 6 weeks. Just ask him any questions. What's going on? Am I doing it the right way, in the right order? Questions about things and concerns I've got, and it's been a real highlight having time with him every 6 weeks just to help think about planting as well.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of support, for us, perhaps slightly more from a sort of host church perspective. Um, it's just been, from my perspective, a wonderful picture of gospel partnership, partnership across finances, but also energy and vision and gospel heartedness that has kind of been infectious as you see that vision coming through the rural project specifically for reaching rural areas where, as you said, there's various resources on church planting and so on, but I think increasingly resources are being produced, but often the mainstay ones are kind of urban to church planting resources. So just tapping into some of that and feeling that kind of support from the rural project, and then just conversations. And I realized that as the first rural resident and rural residency, it was a bit of a work in progress, and we had to just work things out as we went along and work out what would be a wise decision in this situation, thinking not just for our specific, but also hopefully looking ahead and thinking what could be sustainable, what might be repeatable, though everywhere is unique. So yeah, that's felt very much like a support or supportive system to reach this point, or even to get to the start line, as it were. And as Matt's mentioned, the finances as well, very helpful in that regard. And then once it started, again, I think the center of gravity sort of is established within the local church. And I think that's intentional, where, myself and Matt are working together, but having John Hindley just at the end of a phone and chatting away, and me knowing that Matt's able to go to him with questions and wonderings and so on, with a great depth of wisdom from John. And I think looking ahead as well, there's wisdom there for, he's been involved in various church plants himself, and networks and so on. So he has that ready to hand. So yeah, in ongoing ways, there is support that is there, should it be needed. Either whether that's over a particular thing that maybe comes up and you think, oh, how should we go about this? Or just general being there, Zoom calls every now and again, knowing that people are aware and praying and seeking to be positive and support. And yeah, all of those things do make a big difference. And so we're really grateful. I'm grateful to everyone on the call, anyone listening. So I think that support has very much been felt, and not in an overbearing way at all, just in a really, really helpful way. So yeah, that's a bit of it from my end.
It's cool. I should say, I don't think I mentioned at the start, if anyone has any questions, if you want to type them in the chat bit of Zoom, we'll try our best. I have one off the beaten track, I guess. A few of us here, maybe we've got like a assistant pastors, or maybe a church might be in the position of bringing an assistant pastor on board. there's a difference between the kind of like come for 3 years as a kind of independent curate and you're kind of getting your training wheels on, and someone coming and the intention is we've got a church plant at the end of this. But I don't know, you're 1 year in, so there may be a sense in which there isn't a huge difference at this stage. But is there any way that it looks different in doing it in that way? Your relationship together, your relationship as a church, how does a kind of assistant with a view to a plant kind of setup work differently than if it was just a 3 year, 4 year thing?
Shall I start and then you can chip
Yeah,
in?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like in many ways, I've got absolutely no idea.
That's it. That's the answer. That's it.
Partly because being here, I've only been here 4 years or so, and so
Mhm.
haven't had an assistant pastor to sort of compare exactly side by side to say this pathway is different to that pathway.
Mhm.
But I think my initial take, and I think this is what became clear through the leading up to start process, the drawing up of what we called a memorandum of understanding, which is effectively a job description. And that was a really helpful process. And I think in that process, the fact that there was to be a destination that was a new work, whether a revitalization or a plant, I think in my mind, it really helpfully crystallized what are we doing here? What are we aiming for? Rather than a very generalist or what I guess could be a generic program of, well, we'll just want to make sure that you do a bit of preaching, a bit of pastoral care, and all of those things I'm sure are very helpful and very good for assistants putting a toe in the water and just getting used to things. But with this, I think it helped us think quite strategically, or forced us in a good way to think quite strategically about every year of the 3 years. Because at the start 3 years, you feel like I've got loads of time. A year in, and we're like, wow, this has gone so quickly. So let's make the most of the time that we have and work out where we would like to get to, God willing, over the next few months. So I think it's given a real intentionality to that which we're doing. And I mean, very broad brushstroke. First year was very much a get to know people and place and rhythms and rural get to know. So a lot of time just settling in without too much specific time devoted to strategy and future and documents and teams and finances. However, into the second year, that kind of thing is intentionally going to occupy more time, with third year even more so, with a potential whether that looks like a meeting once a month or once a fortnight or a prayer meeting or a midweek, whatever that might look like on the ground, starting that kind of process. So each year thinking quite carefully about that focus and therefore having to relate tasks that are expected, preaching load, pastoral load, all of those kind of aspects of the time, trying to map that out given the messiness of ministry, which always makes things not quite as clean and clear as they might be. But that's kind of from my end. But Matt, do you want to chip in on that?
I was going to add in one thing, which is from sort of a wider church perspective, which I think we realised at the start of the year, this year, didn't we? That actually, firstly, a lot of the congregation just got used to the fact I'm here, which is quite nice. That I'm just part of the architecture now, so I'm there preaching, and they'll, if I call up and say I want to come for a coffee, they know why I'm calling up to say come for coffee. But there's also we've amazingly had a number of new people coming along in the last year who they might have heard that I'm not just an assistant pastor, I've got a role of planting, but they don't really know why, what, where, who. So we realised we had to sort of drip that back in again. So on Sunday, Rob did a little bit at the front again about the Royal Project, about planting. So showed the 2 videos from the websites just to put it back on everyone's agenda of why am I here? What am I aiming to do? And sort of just reframing the role that I'm here for. So those who have been here a whole that time, whole that process can readjust again, and those who are new can realise and understand what's happening, what's going on in the church, and be excited about that.
Mm. Yeah, it's always a challenge, isn't it? With everything in church life, we as pastors think we've said it at a church meeting once, everybody knows it. But people come and go, and yeah, people get used to other things. So that's great. I mean, that kind of leads into the third planned question, which is particularly for you, Rob, what led the church to support Matt in that way, and how's the congregation responded? How was that process from a church perspective of, getting the church behind this plan, which in a sense is more sacrificial, isn't it? It's less kind of we benefit as a church. It's more we're going to invest in someone that will bless elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I think in a lovely way, it has felt, maybe slightly leaning one way or the other at times in terms of just perception or feeling, but it has always felt like I've been honestly able to say this is going to be a huge blessing for us
Mm,
and a huge blessing for whatever comes next. So
mm,
this isn't supposed to be an either or situation, of we accept a huge sort of cost and sacrifice, but see very little benefit. Though obviously in the Christian life, that kind of a scenario is perfectly acceptable and could be
mm,
a very good thing to do, to accept a big sacrifice without much in the way of getting things back. But I think our experience has been wonderfully over the first year that we have seen so many blessings and benefits from having Matt and Rosie and the three boys with us here in a rural congregation that when I started, did have a mature age range. We're probably talking upper 70s into early 80s as sort of an average. So there've been huge blessings that have come with that. Um, uh, and yet costs and sacrifice. And I think some of those costs and sacrifice were things that initially were quite kind of daunting, sort
mm,
of, um, you're talking about a church plant. Surely that means that half of us are going to have to walk out the door. And how could we do that? And I'm 82. I don't want to move house. This sort of knee jerk. And that's not to say that they aren't wonderfully sacrificial and godly and faithful saints. But you can understand that response. So there was a bit of unpacking to do of what the thinking really is, whether that is a new work that is a plant or a revitalization. And even if it is a plant, even then, I think there's various models within church planting. So trying to therefore also say that there is more than one way, and the only way to church plant isn't necessarily just to take a preformed group of 30 to 50 and transport them into a town and set them running with a fully paid salary for a committed 3 to 5 year. It is one way, and wonderfully sometimes that happens, and that's awesome. But I think that's where the Rural Project and some of the writings around that are very helpful at explaining, that isn't often feasible for smaller
mm,
rural ministries. So,
mm,
so don't necessarily box yourself into that way of thinking. So it took a bit of time to unpack that, I think. Um, and I think it's fair to say that for some, there's a kind of a really quick kind of, oh, I see it. That's exciting. This is brilliant. Great. Let's go. I think for others, there's a bit more of a, I'm not sure I understand. I haven't quite got my head around it. And yet they're kind of like, but hey ho. There's others that might see some of the costs and just think, ooh, ouch. This feels painful.
mm,
And it doesn't feel smooth. And so I think just acknowledging those breadth of responses and being willing to take the time with those that need it. And yet at the same time, trying to continue to come back to, and that's what I liked about the videos that we watched on Sunday with Rob Scotland, talking about the gospel heart behind it, going out to
mm,
the hedgerows, wanting to see people saved. And, in Northumberland, there's 320,000 people, and there's probably a handful of
mm.
good gospel teaching churches. So there's so much need. And just I think that's the kind of thing that we've been trying to expand on and to explain. But it's not to say that it's not hard to get your head around. So yeah, that's been understandable. Trying to think if there's anything else to say broadly on that. No, I think that's where in that first year, as I've said, we've just tried to allow them to get to know Matt, to trust him, to spend time before then starting to say, now in the future this could happen or this could work.
Mm.
But I think that's starting to get dripped in now. So I'll stop
Mm.
there though. But anything to add on that front?
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
that's really helpful. And yeah, it makes sense to start with the person, doesn't it? I think that's the scripture's method, you call elders on the basis of character, and I think it's the same. Yeah. There's a great question here. So, with a bit of background to begin with, we're in the middle of interviewing for a new pastor. Neither on the shortlist have a lot of rural experience and are relatively new to the pastor role. So, Matt, from your specific experience in the last year, what would be key things to putting in an onboarding plan on rural specifics if we do a point? And I guess Rob, you've had a similar story as well, so you could probably both contribute on that. Yeah, moving on to being in a rural setting coming from elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's a interesting question. Sorry, I'm just fiddling with the charger. The battery's about to die. So I'll think while I'm doing that. I think in one respect, ministry is very similar. It's ministry. It's people you're dealing with, isn't it? And it's preaching the word. The word doesn't change, but the culture and the context does. And I think just having that time, especially at the start, the first few months, I don't think I preached for the first couple of months, did I? Just having time to then go and be with people, be in the community, and just be able to just be present and learn the rhythms of rural ministry, of rural life, and seeing where the people are at, go and meet some farmers, because that's a very different thing. You don't have that in Centre of Gateshead, there's no farmers. Um, and I think that's having that time, so taking the first couple of months slowly, but to settle in, I think was quite important. For me, I think it really helped. And then I just hit the ground running after that, sort of built everything up, but having that time with people and with the community, which really helped me, having little kids at school, meeting families was really helpful. And being present at, like, we've got a toddler group, being present there, talking to the mums and the dads there, just, as I say, nothing groundbreaking. I think it's a sort of similar thing. If you went from the other way to a city, you'd be doing a similar thing, just getting used to the context, getting used to the people. I don't think there's much groundbreaking in that.
Yeah, I think in some ways I'd add just the in terms of an onboarding plan. I think it strikes me that building in intentional time to spend with those in the rural area, in the community, in the auction mart, in the wherever these places are, allowing that to be part of the working week, intentionally so, rather than sort of setting such perhaps high expectations from either preparation or whatever else it is that might take the time. I think, there's a need to have a bit of time to go and do that, to be places, to learn rhythms, to learn what's important to the community. And I mean, one thing that I did when I got here pretty early on was try to participate as far as time and family and things would allow, but participate in things like a parish council, in a governor of the local school, just things that would in some ways fast track you into being aware of the issues in the community, the difficulties in the communities, the historical issues and so on. And yeah, is a parish council a good place to do that? So yeah, you can learn a lot by being in some of those places, but obviously trying to do that realistically. So yeah, that would be one thought, I think, in terms of that preparing for an onboarding. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one thing from a church's perspective is giving pastors time for that as well. It's easy, especially when you've had a long interregnum, to be like, great, now you can do all the things that we've had to do for ages. But yeah, giving that time to
Mm.
listen. It's easier when there's two of you than when there's one. But yeah, that's really helpful. Another good question here, Matt. How did you source somewhere to live? In a village rural setting, it can be difficult to find appropriate housing. Here in Buckinghamshire, it's very expensive. And as a rural church, we're currently saving up a deposit to purchase a manse in the future. So, yeah, how did that work for you guys?
I'm just going to say it's one of those situations where you can only see God's hand at it because there are not many houses for sale. There's no houses for rent. So we had to sell up our house in Gateshead and buy here, and everything just fell into place for us. So I don't know what else to say other than that, really. We had two choices of houses that were available, and then actually for sale, and then yeah, one of them was just the right size for us and the right location. We were just very thankful because I'm not sure what else we'd have done because there wasn't really a rental market here. So yeah, you're right. It's very tricky. We were worried about that at the start, but thankful for the house we've got, which is a tricky one because we know we've bought a house and we're going to have to sell it again in a couple of years' time. So it's going to be a quick turnaround with it. But yeah, very thankful for that. But yes, I don't know what else to say. It was the Lord's provision at that time. I can't give much more advice, to be honest.
How did it work for you,
I don't know
Rob?
how else it worked out.
Well, just on that, just how beneficial it is, though, that he's living in the town.
Oh yeah.
It does make a big difference that he's living actually in the town rather than driving in from somewhere else. And potentially looking ahead to the future, where this new work might be, it strikes me that actually, worst case scenario, if there was nothing, no houses available in that new space, it is sort of easily commutable to begin with from here. So he's in the region, he's in the area, and could patiently just wait until the right thing came up and then transfer into the next place. But yeah, so I think it is super important if possible, but yes, not always easy, and you're sometimes at the mercy of the housing market. Yeah, and again, I'd understand how owning and managing and looking after a manse for a small independent rural church again is not always within means. Like that's not always possible. Sometimes is, sometimes isn't. But yeah.
When we were looking at moving, there was quite a lot of houses that were 2-bed bungalows, and there was a few which were 7, 8-bed, basically mansions, which obviously have that price range. And so 2-bed bungalow when you've got 3 little boys running around, we can't we can't have that. So it was yeah, very thankful for the house that came up in the end. But yeah, it was touch and go.
Yeah, and from our experience, our church, praise God, some enterprising man in the Victorian era got a house for our church that we still have, and and it has long-term borne fruit in the area. Because when we first came, there was another family living in the area, non-Christian family, just rented the house out from the church, and we spent the first year living out of the area, and then after that living in, and the difference is night and day. And actually, half our neighbours now come to something at church. There's been that, so it's definitely worth thinking through. I would say I've seen Kingdom Bank. I don't know if you've ever come across that, but they give lots of options that are particularly for churches to maybe getting a mortgage that would be harder to get from a church, maybe helping support a church half own and a pastor half own. So I've not looked at it in great detail because it didn't matter to us, but I remember seeing an advert for it and thinking that could be really helpful to a lot of people on in rural projects. So do have a look at that if you haven't already. Okay, one more question before just something to pray for as well. But what would you say to other individuals or churches who are considering either a rural residency or something similar? I'm aware that Free Church in Scotland do similar things. There's nothing special about us, but if somebody was considering that either from the church perspective or from the potential planter perspective, what would you have to say other than what you said already?
I would say be patient, but don't wait.
Hmm.
Um, I I think one of the blessings that we have very much received here with Matt coming has been a sense of revitalization within. Just it's helped bring people's eyes up and out, and just a sense of even just an extra pair of hands, but an energy and a future looking and a sense of going out to the hedgerows and a sense of praying for workers for the harvest field. And here is one, and a sense of excitement and dynamism, which has really, I think, revitalized, as well as I think the simple case of, I'm here with family, but then to have a second family, easier for other families to see and stop and come. And we have seen something of that. So that's been a huge blessing. And I can see the temptation, perhaps in smaller rural churches, to say, well, we'll just wait until we have reached such and such a moment, or we'll just wait until we've got so much in the bank and so on before we even consider it. But I just think even in considering it, the conversations we had that went along the lines of, well, why would anyone want to plant a church?
Mhm.
That's a good question. Let me tell you. Here we are. Like, it was so helpful to have those conversations, and I think it helped revitalize us from the inside out. And now we're experiencing that blessing, and then the work in the future is an excitement. So yeah, in that way, I'd say obviously be patient and don't just rush into these things, because a wrong appointment or a bad appointment could be really hurtful, harmful, perhaps. But actually, the day draws nearer, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few, the need is urgent. I'd almost be saying, what's stopping you thinking about it? I just really, if there's a person, or even if there isn't, if there are the means, but there could be a person that can put their hand up, then yeah, that would be my kind of encouragement, to say just don't wait. That the need is great. And I think this was encouragement from John Hindley, who said, he's seen various training programs, be run in different capacities in America and here and so on. And his reflections so far do seem to very much be like, this seems like a solid, repeatable, good kind of model, which we pray does bear fruit for God's glory. And so I think with that kind of wisdom and experience and encouragement, I'd sort of be saying, let's just crack on. And I'd really encourage churches, even if feeling small, even feeling if declining, or whatever position you find yourself in, it could be really great thing. That'd be my encouragement. Matt?
Sorry, for the individual, I think it kind of mirrors that quite a lot. I think you said about the harvest field and the workers are few is so true. There's such a great need, as we all know on this call, in the rural context. And that if someone is thinking a little bit about it, you may have been maybe in the city and urban context, thinking about the rural context, come and have a conversation with the leadership team, with those, with me if you want to, with Rob. We'll happily chat, and actually sometimes it's not appropriate for someone to do it because they're better suited for different contexts. But that's wisdom for others to get involved in and talk to you about. And I think just having the question, having the conversation is a starting place, because there's such a need for more churches in that rural area. That actually, if you think about it, well, then give it a go in a way. And having the time to do it this way, there's no way you can parachute in like this and just start a church. You need to be part of the context. You need to be seeing what's going on the ground, seeing the people, and seeing the needs, and having the support of a local church to then be sending you out. It's been so important, such a blessing, and have that time here, even just after 1 year, has been an absolute blessing for us. So I think it's a really great way of doing it, having those 3 years, maybe 4 years, depending on the person, in the context to then be sent out. It's been an absolute blessing for us. Yeah.
Great. Praise God. Well, for those of you watching later on YouTube, if you do want to join us at our Suffolk conference on the 7th of March, there'll be a link in the description. And if you're on the call now, don't worry, I'll send you a link. Thanks so much, Rob and Matt. If you're watching online, our next one of these is in the 21st of April with John Hindley, who we mentioned a few times on this call. He's going to be talking about church planting in Norfolk, and also they're moving things forward into a new area as well. So it's great to hear different stories. I think it just gives you different ideas of how it could work. So we'd love you to join us. And again, you'll find the link below. So bye bye to those of you watching online.